Hi, it's Tanya from My Forking Life, and today we're in the kitchen and we are making fluffy, soft, delicious dinner rolls right in our air fryer. Now, of course, typically when we think of dinner rolls, we think of baking them in the oven. However, we can make a smaller batch and we can bake them right in our air fryer, especially if our oven is busy doing other things like, baking turkeys or pies or cakes. I could go on and on. All right, before we get started, don't forget, if you like this content, please give me a thumbs up. Also, if you want to be notified every time I upload a new video, make sure you subscribe and also hit that bell notification. All right, let's get started. Now for this bread recipe, all you're gonna need is a few simple ingredients. I've got here some bread flour, some salt, regular iodized salt. I've got some granulated sugar, some baking yeast, some milk, some water, and some unsalted butter. That's it. That's all we're going to use to make this recipe, except we're also going to add a little bit of love. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do what's called blooming my yeast. I've got here some, I think it's pretty much like rapid rise yeast, but rather adding it right to my salt or my flour, I always like to bloom it so that way I know that my yeast is ready and working to continue baking. You could try to just add instant yeast right to your flour. However, whether it's active yeast or instant yeast, I'm always going to let it bloom for a little bit. All right, so what we're going to do is we want to make sure that our water is the correct temp. So generally I try to shoot for anything between 100 to 110. This is about 115, which is also fine. You just want to make sure your water isn't too hot. So if it's at 150 degrees, that's probably too hot, and water that is too hot is just going to basically not make your yeast work. So to bloom it, just gonna cut this package. And if you don't have a package, just know that this holds about 2 1/4 teaspoons of yeast. Because I want this to bloom pretty fast, I'm also gonna add a little bit of my granulated sugar in there. That's just gonna make, sugar basically is food for yeast, and that's gonna make that yeast puff up. All right, I'm gonna leave it alone. Set it aside for 10 minutes and we'll come back and watch it do its magic. So while my yeast is blooming, I'm gonna go ahead and get my other ingredients prepared. I am using here some bread flour, and I've also got a scale. Now, if you don't have a scale, you can totally just measure out your flour by cups, but for the most accurate results, especially when it comes to baking breads, I always like to measure at least the flour. So this recipe calls for 2 cups and a quarter cup of flour. I'm actually gonna measure that with a scale, and that's going to actually be 281 grams on the scale. Now, if you don't have bread flour, you can also use all-purpose flour, but just note that if you're doing all-purpose flour, you may have to adjust the amount of liquid that you add to your recipe. Look at that. I did it. 281 grams on the nose. I'm also going to just grab a little bit extra flour. I'm not adding this to this. However, this will help when we're actually forming our bread to flour the surface, as well as our hands when we're kneading our dough. All right, and that's it. That's all I actually usually really measure, because that's usually the difficulty as far as getting the correct measurements. All right, so I'm going to add the remaining sugar to this bowl of flour, and I'm going to add about a teaspoon of salt to this as well. I'm just going to stir this together. So it's been about 10 minutes, and this is what our yeast has done. It's definitely bloomed up a lot. As you can see, we started at a quarter cup. It filled up the whole cup. All right, so I'm going to continue on with the recipe by adding this mixture along with our remaining ingredients to our flour. Get all that foamy stuff in there. I've got 1/2 cup of milk. This is just regular 2% milk. You could use full percent, 1/4%, whatever. And I'm gonna add, just something in there, about 3 tablespoons of softened butter. And I'm gonna use a spoon to kind of mix that together and get it all kind of like crumpled together. And if you have a stand mixer, you could totally do this step in the stand mixer on the knead dough setting or whatever. But I just wanted to do this by hand to show that you don't need necessarily special equipment to make bread. So I've kind of got this combined. I'm going to switch over to the table. If you've got a wooden board or a marble slab, you want to do that, but you need a flat surface to go ahead and knead this. So I'm just gonna drop this here, and I like to flour my hands before I start kneading. Basically, they say flour your tools, not the actual dough. And I'm going to continue to knead it for about 8 to 10 minutes until it forms a smooth dough. Put on a movie, relax, listen to some music, because it's going to take a little bit of time. All right. So my dough is kneaded. It's one thing I love about dough, right? Like, how does this floury clump just turn into something so smooth and elastic? Alrighty. I think that's how you check it, if it comes back. Now that our dough is kneaded and ready, I'm going to go ahead and set this in a greased bowl for about an hour to an hour and a half until it's about double in size. And I'm going to make sure I cover it. The best thing to cover these grease bowls in my opinion, is saran wrap. It'll keep your dough moist, but it'll also allow it to rise and expand in the bowl. La 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 la. Ugh. All right, and I'm going to place this in the corner of my kitchen, and I'll be back in about an hour or an hour and a half. Bye. I'm back. It's been about 2 hours actually, and my dough has increased substantially. It took a little bit longer, mainly because it's kind of cold in here, but we've got it to a point that we wanted it to be. So I'm going to go ahead and lightly flour this surface. Give it a little bit of a punch. That's a little bit mean. All right, and I'm going to just roll my dough out on the surface. Kind of like to, give it a little bit of a turn. So I'm going to cut this dough into about 12 pieces. I'll go ahead and cut this into 3. Whoop. And cut each of these 3s into 2. Haha! I'm good at math. And so cut each one of these into 2 as well. A better, more accurate way would be to measure each piece so that they're all super equal in size, but I don't feel like doing that. All right, and I'm going to roll each of these into a ball. So the proper way to do that is I just get like an area that doesn't have a ton of flour. You can kind of like fold it into, put it kind of somewhat flat, fold it up like in the middle, turn it over and use your hand, make a little circle and kind of roll it into a ball. And then you've got like a dinner roll. Boom. All right, and I'm going to continue to do that, but what I'm also going to do is I'm going to line my air fryer basket with parchment paper, because anytime you're baking, you do want to try to line your basket. That is the best way so that your baked goods don't kind of get stuck to that basket, nor will they get these like weird shapes on the bottom of the rolls. So I'm going to put these in the basket, and I'm going to make sure that my rolls are touching, because I do want these to be pull apart rolls. And the way to do that is just to basically put each dough next to each other, or each roll next to each other when you're baking it. This one's like a baby roll. Probably want to, it's a little bit too small for me. I'm going to make it bigger. All right, so I have rolled all my little rolls. Some of them look a little bit raggedy. It's okay. And there we have it. We've got our rolls, and we are going to keep them in our air fryer basket. We are not going to bake them at this time. We are going to let these rise for a second time. I am going to place this inside my air fryer, and I'm going to leave it untouched. Do not even plug it in. My air fryer is not even plugged in. I'm going to put it in there, and I'm going to let these rise for a second time for about 45 minutes to an hour till they get just a little bit more puffy. All right, I'll be back. So our rolls have been in our air fryer that has been off and closed, rising for the second time for about 45 minutes. And just to show you what they look like, you can see they've risen, just a little bit. They're not overly risen, but they did get a little bit of air. All right, so I'm going to now plug in my air fryer, and bake these on 300 degrees Fahrenheit for about 15 to 18 minutes. We want to make sure we keep that temp at 300 degrees so the tops of the rolls don't get too dark. All right. So our rolls have been in the air fryer for about 15 minutes, and this is what they look like. So our rolls are done. As you can see, they're nice and golden on the outside. And I'm going to go ahead and remove this. They're still hot. Be careful. Ooh, hot. Oh, look. I'm just going to grab them. Oh. Ooh, that's hot. Ooh, that's hot. And they fell apart because they're so hot. And while they're so hot, I'm going to take that leftover salted butter and just kind of go over the top of them while they're still warm. See, that butter just automatically melts. That's a lot of butter. And to make them even extra more special, I've got some coarse salt here. The large grains, just sprinkle that on top. Ooh. Now these rolls are super hot. You'll probably want them to cool a little bit before you tear in. And let's pull them apart. This looks amazing. Look how fluffy and soft that is. Perfection. That's a good dinner roll. Right, y'all. Gotta go. But that's how you make super fluffy dinner rolls in your air fryer. Until the next time,